When we're counting in tens, the first thing children need to know is what counts the tens number, because they won't be able to count in tens unless they can recognise them. So the way we would do that is using a grid like this, which you could pull up on a screen, print off, or make for yourself. I would teach them how to count every tenth number. So if they can count to 10, they can do this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Give it a mark. Carry on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. And as you go through this, they will hopefully start to see the pattern. They'll hopefully start to see that their tens numbers are exactly the same as their normal counting, but just with an extra 0, which links to the place value that they'll learn later on. They can then put the numbers in order and keep practicing them. 10, 20, 30, 40, etc. Just like when you're first starting to learn to count. They'll recite them, they'll practice them, and soon it will become second nature. And you could then do things like this. You could, without them looking, cover over some numbers and see if they can recognise which ones are missing. This is then really helpful for when they want to do some games. Your child could use handprints to count in tens, using both hands at the same time. You could have a tray like this, which could have sand in, or salt or sugar if you don't have sand, and they can count in tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, etc. Or you could play little games with it. You could do sets of handprints and say, how many fingers have I done all together, and ask them to do it in 10, so 10, 20, etc. They could do it for you could do it for them, or they could even do it with their toys as well. If they have dolls or something, they could use the doll's fingers and toes to make the prints. You could use your footprints in water outside. So I'm just standing in a bit of water, and then your child could create their own footprints. So they would be saying 10, 20, 30, and then what you end up with is a number line counting in tens using footprints, which can then be used for counting or for even playing other games. It's great to involve children's toys in whatever they're doing because they tend to love them. So you could use toys like this. You could line up the toys and you could say if each one had 10p, how much do they have altogether? And just count as you go. 10, 20, 30, 40, etc. You can also use toys to count how much an individual toy might have. So for example, you could look at these animals and you could say, how much does each one have? And they could count. So we've got 10, 20, 30, 40p. Or this animal has 10, 20, 30. Over here, etc. We've got 90 and we've got 50. Your child could count them all. And then this also lends itself really well to games about who has more or how much more or how much less, which would be the next step once children have mastered counting. Crabs have 10 legs, so another game you can play is to ask a child to put out their hand and you can run a crab along it. They could have their eyes closed, so every time they feel a crab, they'd say a number, so 10, 20, 30, and they could try to tell you how many legs had run across. They might like to do it in their head or out loud, so if they did it in their head, it might look something like this. And they'd say 40 legs. And you could take it in turns, they could do it to you, you could do it to them. Just a fun way of doing it in a bit of a different way. Hopefully that's given you some ideas of how to get started with counting with tens. There are lots of games you can try and your child is sure to find things that will help them.